Hi, Dr. P here to talk about winning and losing in games. How important is that in contemporary games? Well, not nearly important as it used to be. Traditionally, losing was part of playing games. But nowadays, we're different. And that's some the influence of video games and some just the zeitgeist. People in schools are taught to avoid competition. They get rewarded for participation, not for success or failure. Moreover, you cannot lose the typical video game because you can respawn, because you can save games. Even roguelike games, you can find where the save file is and save it, even though theoretically when you die in a roguelike you're done. You're not. And of course we have free-to-play distribution. The games are freely downloadable. They have to be easy to succeed in, or people will quit them before they've played long enough to spend money on microtransactions. So circumstances have changed. It's no longer, as the Green Bay Packers coach Vince Lombardi said, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. Now it's hardly anything to most players. Now we can tie this in with game studies. Game studies people are usually academics, and surprisingly enough to me, they often assumed in the past that everyone plays a game to win. That may have been close to true centuries ago. I'd suspect there was a lot more betting on games in the past, and so winning was important because of money, if nothing else. But nowadays, game playing, especially on the tabletop, is strongly social, strongly about entertainment, and often casual. There are also many, many more games for more than two players, or only one player in video than in the past. If you look at very old games like chess and checkers and Go and Japanese chess and so forth, most of them are for two players. Or they're race games, not like typical board games nowadays. So for most of history, games have been about two fundamentals: winning or losing and just enjoying the game. Serious games and betting games are more the former, party and family games more the latter. But again, video games have changed that. Let's consider arcade games, early video games. You can't win an arcade game. It's designed for you to lose in a fairly short time, yet give you incentive to put more money in the machine. In that way, the player can gain mastery, but will always fail in the end. When someone finally went through all 255 levels of Pac-Man without losing a single life, many years after it was originally released, the software crashed. The game wasn't meant to be finished. Now, home video games are a different kettle of fish. You play at home, you've already paid for the game, there's no reason to make it hard for you. And if you haven't paid for the game, that is, it's a free-to-play game, if the designers make it hard, then many players will just quit. And that defeats the designer's purpose of having you play long enough to spend money on in-game transactions. You have to make the game easy, enticing, so that players will continue to play. It doesn't work with winning and losing. Now we can also consider losing versus failure. At some point, losing transformed into some circles into any feeling of failure. Quoting from 2007, which is now 11 years ago, "Losing for the Win, Defeat and Failure in Gaming" by Ben Schneider on Gama Sutra. Quote, "At my first job in the industry, working in the single-player department at the now-defunct Stainless Steel Studios, we were strictly forbidden to create scenarios with anything even vaguely resembling defeat or loss in the storylines." And that's 11 years ago. That's what people are growing up with now. Not losing, but continuous success. Reward versus consequence, it's often called. Now, of course, many video games are really experiences rather than opposed games. You experience something you cannot or would not do in real life. You can be an astronaut. You can be fighting aliens and so forth. At some point, losing becomes irrelevant, if not downright undesirable. Any negative consequences are avoided by the designers. Now, in the really hardcore video games, you can still get yourself killed a lot, and it can be very difficult. But still, in the end, if you persist, if you have sufficient skill, you're going to succeed. Now, consider also that many people playing games nowadays are much more into exploring games. They're about what the game does, how it works, and then they move on after 1 to 3 plays for a tabletop or after 1 play for a video. Winning doesn't have much to do with it. It's a kind of form of to see what happens next attitude, but in this case, to see what the game does next in conjunction with what you do. It's not unusual to see players helping others out in the same game, which isn't likely what highly competitive players would do, because they're helping others explore the game. It's about exploring the game, not winning. Cooperative games have become popular because they are clearly explorations of a more or less puzzle. Players collectively want to win, yes, but it's not so important when everyone wins or loses together. Now, I don't count as co-ops games where the group must win, but then someone within the group is the main winner, or where there's a traitor. Those aren't real co-ops. Tabletop RPGs have been around now for more than 40 years. And there the ultimate co-ops is usually played. Some of such games are actually storytelling aids or storytelling machines. There are no victory conditions in many RPGs, especially tabletops. Now, for that reason, some well-known people say RPGs aren't actually games. I don't subscribe to that. You can still succeed or fail. It just isn't highly defined. So, to summarize quickly, designers need to keep in mind winning is no longer the only thing. It's not even the main thing in many cases. Thanks for listening.